What happened? So Jack Ryan Season 2 is now on Amazon Prime Video, and this season follows Jack Ryan, who searches for the truth behind Venezuela's transactions with various world powers, and James Greer, who's about to get sidelined from his new post in Russia in Moscow, joins Jack in Venezuela, and the two find themselves in the midst of a Venezuelan leader's re-election effort and a bit larger conspiracy. So yes, I am talking about Jack Ryan Season 2. This season came out a while ago, I believe it was October of last year. Now, I watched the first season of Jack Ryan when it came out, and I absolutely loved it. I was a huge fan of it. I thought it was a great first season, and I couldn't wait to see where Season 2 was going to go, because I just thought the show was so much fun, it was so accessible, it was just a really nice watch, and I really liked John Krasinski in the lead role. And going into this season, while it is a little bit late, of course, I've only just watched this. I binged it yesterday, just because it took me a while to get around to it. And given the fact that, as I keep saying, there's not really anything new to talk about, might as well talk about it. So, going into Season 2, I was excited. I was very excited, actually, to see where it was going to go. And unfortunately, this season, while it does have some high points, I definitely feel like Season 2 completely underswept the first season, which was a real shame. So John Krasinski as Jack Ryan is still really strong and consistent throughout the series. I do find it interesting what they do with Jack in this season, in the sense that in the first season he has this almost incredibly positive and incredibly almost Boy Scout kind of energy, kind of Captain America-esque energy, which is ironic given the fact that John Krasinski was almost cast as Captain America. But it's just really fun to kind of see how that has developed in this season, because in this season he's a little more gruff, he's a little more rough around the edges, he's a little more almost angry in this season. He's kind of less afraid to get out into the field, which is kind of interesting because in last season there was a line where a character says to him, for an analyst, you're surprisingly adept in the field, incredibly confident in the field. And that line almost didn't make sense last season given his fish out of water style sort of approach that they went with that character. But in this season, it really felt like that line should have been in this season, because it just felt a lot more appropriate, because he was truly adept in the field this time, or truly adept in the field I should say, and that was nice to see. But I do feel like Jack lacked a bit of personality this season. I do feel like that his character just didn't have much going on other than what was happening on screen, which was a shame. Like, there wasn't really much going on behind the scenes of the character, which we got a lot in the first season and added a lot more depth to him and made him a lot more relatable and grounded. In this season, there isn't really much of that. And my main problem with this season is that I just feel like the story overall was incredibly generic, and we've just seen it before. It's this thing where you've got this weapons transaction coming in, people are buying it, they need to get behind it and figure out who's, buying what and where it's coming from. And this is all kind of masked over this re-election process that's going on between this, sort of foreign leader who's almost like a dictator style thing, who's about to be overthrown by, a more new and more popular kind of electee candidate. And it's all about trying to get her to the win and, get him out. So it's kind of like a story that we've seen before. It's not anything new or exciting, and they don't really do anything with this story to make it interesting. Now, around the midway point of the season, they do introduce an element into it which does make it a bit more interesting, with this new assassin for hire character who comes in, who I actually really liked him in this season. I thought he was really cool. His name is Max Schenkel. I thought he was a really cool addition to the cast. But even he isn't really enough to kind of make it interesting enough, because he's not really in the season as much as you would want him to be. So I feel like that this overall story and this overall plot, while it was just incredibly generic and they tried to do something, it just falls completely flat because it's just so unoriginal. And talking about other cast members as well, Noomi Rapace joins the cast in this one, and she's a fairly big get for this show, and I think that, her addition was really nice. I did enjoy her part of it. I think that she had a really nice rapport with Jack, especially because a character like Jack needs a character like her, because she is, very conspicuous. You don't know where she's going to go, you don't know where her loyalties lie, and I think that Jack, being a character who is very Boy Scout, as I said earlier, he kind of needs that character to kind of, make him even more gritty. Even though they did a bit more gritty work with him within this season, still having a character like Noomi Rapace's character to really bring him into that more sort of conspiracy-driven world, I think was a smart move. And she was also just a really fun and badass character to bring into the show. But as I mentioned earlier, this season is just lacking originality. The season just doesn't really have much going for it. And while the things that were good about the first season performance-wise, like John Krasinski, and of course Jim Greer throughout the season, who was also great. I just feel like this season was just lacking any kind of pizzazz and any kind of energy to it, that it just wasn't really fulfilling like the first season was. And I think that this season it's trying to do new things, and it's trying to be clearly this self-contained story. Clearly how they're sort of playing this Jack Ryan series is they're trying to make each season fairly self-contained, because that was another big problem I had with this season, was that they just completely disregarded everything from the first season pretty much. Like, you basically have Jack Ryan and Jim Greer returning, and other than that, everything is kind of new. There is one other character who returns in the season, but pretty much other than that, everything's new. The whole story's new. You don't need to watch the first season to watch season 2, I will say that. So if you are planning to watch season 2 and you've not seen season 1, then you can. Although, if you're thinking about that, let me just tell you, go watch season 1, because it's far better than this. But it's weird to me that they're going with this self-contained story, because the problem with that is that it makes this season take about 3 to 4 episodes to actually get going. And that's really weird, because normally for a show to get going, that happens in the first season. But because this is acting so self-contained, and it basically feels like a season 1, it has to get the ground running again, and it just takes far too long, and then for a season 2, it just doesn't feel right. So overall, Jack Ryan season 2 I found immensely disappointing. I was very excited going into the season because I loved the first, but this season just has such an unoriginal and such generic plot. The villain who leads that plot is just absolutely dreadfully boring. Not acting wise, the acting, you know, is fine, but it's just the character himself is just so, you've just seen this villain in so many movies and shows before, and the plot that surrounds it with the electoral campaign, it just is so boring. And you know, it takes such a long time to get going because of this self-contained sort of angle they're going with this show. I'm interested to see how season 3 pans out, because we are getting a 3rd season, so I want to see if they are going to do it very self-contained like they did this time, because if they are, I'm just going to say I don't think it's the right direction for a show like this, and it almost makes me feel like they should have just done this as a mini-series with the first season and then left it at that, because this season was just not a good representation. And while John Krasinski is still strong in the role, I still love Jim Greer, and the action scenes were also very good in the season, almost movie-like level quality as the first season. Everything else surrounding it is just really struggling to hold it all together, because the plot is just so unoriginal, and you're going to be bored through your teeth, especially in the first handful of episodes. You're going to be struggling to get through those episodes, as I did. Around episode 2-3, I was honestly considering dropping the season. I was that bored. But if you do want to stick with it, it does pick up. It just never quite reaches the height of that first season, which was a real shame. So have you guys seen Jack Ryan season 2? If you have, make sure to let me know all your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Whatever you thought about it. And also, which season did you prefer? Did you prefer season 1 or prefer season 2? Because based on what I've seen, it's very, very split. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, guys, if you want to see more TV reviews and TV related videos just like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.